You don't get a childhood. Not really. You're born in a process called neurogenesis, squeezed out of a neural stem cell somewhere in the developing brain. And from the very first moment you exist, you have one job. Find something to connect to, not tomorrow, not eventually, right now. Because if you don't make enough connections fast enough, the brain will kill you on purpose. That's not a metaphor. The brain executes roughly half of all neurons it creates during development. It's called apoptosis, programmed cell death, and it's not a malfunction. It's the plan. You are produced in massive excess specifically so the weakest ones can be culled. You are born into a competition you didn't enter and can't opt out of, where the prize is simply being allowed to continue existing. Welcome to the nervous system. It only gets worse from here. You spend your first week sending out projections called axons and dendrites, long branching arms that stretch through brain tissue desperately reaching for other neurons to connect with. Think of it like being dropped in a dark room and told to shake hands with strangers, except the room is the size of a universe at your scale. And if you don't shake enough hands in time, you die. You find connections. You survive the culling. Congratulations. Now the real work begins. Your entire purpose, the thing you will do every single second for the rest of your life, is pass electrical signals from one place to another. That's it. A signal comes in through your dendrites, travels down your axon, gets converted into a chemical called a neurotransmitter, crosses a tiny gap called a synapse, and triggers the next neuron. You are a biological wire, a living relay station. You will do this somewhere between 100 and 1,000 times per second, every second, for decades, and you will never once know what message you're carrying. The human you live inside might be doing calculus, might be feeling heartbreak, might be choosing what to have for lunch. You have absolutely no idea. You just fire when the signal tells you to fire. You are one of 86 billion neurons doing the same thing simultaneously, and none of you know what the conversation is about. Here's where it gets uncomfortable. You are expensive, catastrophically, embarrassingly expensive. Your brain takes up about 2% of the human body's weight, but burns 20% of its total energy. Most of that is you. Keeping neurons alive and firing requires a constant river of glucose and oxygen. And if that river gets interrupted for even a few minutes, neurons start dying in catastrophic numbers. A stroke cuts off blood supply to part of the brain. In the first few minutes, neurons in the affected area die at a rate of about 1.9 million per minute. Not slowly, not gradually. Nearly 2 million neurons per minute gone. The surrounding neurons, the ones on the edge of the damage zone, face a different horror. The dying cells release their contents into the surrounding tissue, a toxic flood of glutamate that overstimulates neighboring neurons and causes them to fire so rapidly and continuously that they basically burn themselves out. Your neighbors die screaming electrically, and their death chemicals might kill you too. You didn't cause the stroke. You didn't do anything wrong. You were just nearby. Assuming you survive all of that, here's your daily reality. You cannot divide. Almost every other cell in the body can replicate itself when needed. Skin cells, liver cells, blood cells. They reproduce constantly, replacing themselves, refreshing the tissue. You cannot do this. You are post-mitotic, locked permanently out of the cell cycle. The neuron you are today is the neuron you will be forever. There are no replacements. There are no backups. If you die, you are simply gone, and the connections you maintained, the specific learned pathways you were part of, get degraded or lost entirely. Every skill the human has ever learned, every memory they've ever formed, exists partly as a pattern of synaptic connections between specific neurons. You might be part of the connection that encodes the sound of their mother's voice, or the muscle memory for riding a bicycle, or a moment from their childhood they haven't consciously thought about in years, but that still lives quietly in the network. You don't know which one. You just maintain your connections and fire when the signal comes. And every decade, more of your neighbors die and don't come back. Let's talk about sleep, because this is where things get genuinely strange. While the human is awake, you work constantly. Every thought, every movement, every sensation passes through neurons firing in cascades. The metabolic cost of all this activity is enormous, and it produces waste. Toxic proteins accumulate in the spaces between neurons throughout the day, including a protein called amyloid beta, the same one that clumps into plaques in Alzheimer's disease. You are slowly poisoning your own environment just by doing your job. Here's the fix. When the human sleeps, the brain's lymphatic system kicks in. The spaces between neurons actually expand, and cerebrospinal fluid flushes through, washing out the accumulated waste. Sleep is not rest for you. Sleep is the only chance you get to clean the toxic byproduct of your own existence out of your immediate surroundings. Miss enough sleep and the waste builds up. The signals get noisier, the connections get sloppier, and the long-term damage accumulates in ways that don't fully reverse. You spend your whole life generating poison and praying the cleaning crew shows up on schedule. You will work without pause for the entire lifespan of this human. Decades of firing, maintaining, adapting, rewiring, never dividing, never resting, never knowing what you're part of. And at the end, you will not be thanked. You will not be remembered. You will simply stop firing one day, and the network will route around you as best it can, and the human will feel it only as a slight blurring, a word they can't quite reach, a memory that used to be sharp and now isn't. You were never one neuron. You were always just a node in something too large to see, and that thing never once looked back at you.